Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Backstage with Millionaires. Today I'm having a conversation with Aviral Bhatnagar of a junior VC. And the reason I'm so excited to talk to you, Aviral, is because I've been following your work. I've been reading your newsletter for many years now. And I think that's how a lot of people know you, right? Through your writings on various platforms on internet. But what not many people know is that you've recently launched your own fund. It's a
Hmm.
pre-seed stage startup fund, and you give a pretty standard deal to everyone, 1.5 crore rupees for 9% equity. So through this conversation, I want to understand this journey of being an observer of Indian startup ecosystem to being an enabler now. And I want to begin with writing because I think that has enabled this all. So how did this journey of writing start,
Right.
and over the years how has it shaped you as a person?
Thank you for having me. Firstly, I think you guys are doing something super interesting for the Indian ecosystem. I mean, we are not very big on YouTube, but you guys are obviously doing a good job there. And I'm very happy when anybody is trying to educate others on the startup ecosystem.
Thank
So
you.
kudos for that and keep doing it. I think the writing is has started to become a little bit of a rare species in some way because everyone is like either video first or image first. But I think writing is probably one of the best ways to express yourself. um, I have been a very avid reader for most of my life. I mean, since I remember, my mom even used to tell me this story where I didn't know how to read, but I used to hear her flipping through pages of a book, and I would remember the words that she would say along with the page turns. So then when she would ask me to read the book, I would do it to very shocked friends of hers. But I was actually not reading, I just remembered the sound and I would like repeat it. So starting from there, I've had a very um, good and happy relationship with the written form. And I think that translated into writing. So I have, I've read so many books. You can see it in the background. I have like lots of books. um, and I used to write poetry when I was in school, but I didn't really write, outside of what was expected in class in English or anything.
You used to
um,
follow your interest.
yeah, I used to just do what was asked in school. And when I went to college in my second year, I had become very active in the literary art scene. And there was a senior of mine who told me that, I think you write in an interesting way. There's this new website called Quora, which is like new startup, Silicon Valley started. I didn't know any of that. And he kept nudging me for many months that, yeah, you should write. And I used to be very frightened that, how can I write in public and what will people think? Um, I think the overriding fear was, will anybody actually engage with this? I write it and then, nobody reads.
I think that's the
So
fear most
yeah,
people
that's the
have.
fear most people have. They give a lot of excuses usually. Like a lot of people now ask me for advice on writing. They explain, oh, I don't have time and I can't think. I think everyone wants to write if they have the audience. So I think the big fear is that one, that who will read. And I think it came to a point where I became very clear that I'm writing for myself, as a form of self expression. And so I yielded, and then I wrote, and then my first answer got 5 upvotes. And
Wow. Which year was it?
this was in 2012.
So
And
just when Quora started.
yeah, about when Quora started. And two of them were like, one was obviously my senior, and the other was some wingmate of mine. And there were three unknown people. And I was really thrilled. I was like, wow, there are like three people who I don't know who like this. So there was a nudge, and I didn't have some crazy expectation. I think the process of writing itself was fulfilling. I've kept that feeling with me till date. So I write for myself. I don't write for others or what will other people think, etc. And I think that allows me to remain authentic and true to what I'm feeling. um, the other observation I had once I started writing was a lot of people had an interest in the IITs as a topic. So I have coined this term for myself, which is called total attention market, or TAM, for certain topics. So IITs had a very large TAM, but very limited supply of authentic people who wrote. And the reason was very simple, that IIT ke liye you study PCM, but you don't study how to write, and so there are not too many writers. So people would ask all random questions about IITs, and some non-IITians would write all random answers. So I was like, somebody has to, put the truth out there in some way. So I started writing about IITs. Then it picked up, and that's been like the journey for me over the last 10 years that I've been writing. I always pick up an authentic thing that I can talk about, and then I talk about it from my own lens. Um,
Yeah.
and that's really, that was the start of the journey.
Yeah, and I think over the years that focus of your writing has now
Hmm.
shifted to startup ecosystem and economy
Hmm.
at large. So I want to understand, how did that transition happen? Like from writing poetry to now you're writing about startups, about money. So like, do you have a genuine interest in these subjects, or does your work require you to write about them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think the work was ever the reason for me to write. In fact, I am a 24/7 startup guy, who is constantly in touch with the ecosystem during weekdays and during weekends. Initially, when I started a junior VC, which has become AJVC, the fund now, it was a blog I used to write on the weekends. So weekdays I was a venture investor, weekends I was writing. So it was not to enable my work, it was just like I love doing it. I still do, I mean, that's why I do it. I think my topics have become a little broader. So it's India, startups, tech, business, and sometimes like just observation about what's happening around me on things I understand. um, I stay away from things I don't think I have a informed opinion on, necessarily, like politics and others. So I try to only stick to the lane that I get. I've never written with a goal in mind, if that's what you were asking, that I want to generate some amount of
Leads.
interest. No, that's all been a byproduct. It's never been the primary goal. The primary goal is I just love it. मेरे को बहुत मजा आता है. And there is nothing that beats that. Like, I've been so when we started the newsletter 5 years ago, I've not missed Sunday 9:30 a.m. every fortnight for the last 6 years or 5 years, and consistently, like, I've done it. On LinkedIn, I've written for the last 3.5 years every day. So
Every
that's like
day.
every day. So it's 1,200, 1,300 posts. Um, and you can only do it if you love it, yeah. It's not, it's not functional for me. It's because I enjoy it. So, and
Yeah.
it's been super, super valuable for me. Like, I've built the best connections, networks. Even a lot of this fund came through because of that. Um, and I wouldn't, I couldn't recommend it higher. Like, if you could write, you should do it. It's very powerful.
Yeah, and as you said,
Hmm.
it's super valuable for both, because
Yes,
people are reading what you have been writing, but then you're learning in return as to what's actually happening on ground, how are people taking it. And I
correct,
think somewhere on this journey, you realized that there's a gap in early stage startup funding in India. So I want to understand about that. What was that insight? What was that gap did you see? Did you receive a lot of DM maybe of people
correct,
saying we need funding?
correct.
Or maybe you just realized it on the way? I want to understand about that.
Very many things came together. बहुत सारी चीजें साथ में आ गई. And it was through writing, it was through reading, it was through observing. I'm also a practitioner as well because I'm investing. So lots of DMs, yes. Lots of emails, yes. Lots of interest, yes. Um, I think a few things started to happen together, and this is a many year process. It's not like just happened overnight. I was tracking Y Combinator for my previous fund, And I started to see them receding from India. Like they started to do lesser and lesser deals, and I used to wonder why. And then I realized that it was probably because they wanted to focus on their core market. Because YC is one of the best pre-seed funds in the world, probably the best. I don't think there's anyone who comes close. And I first started to wonder if it is because the pre-seed market in India is not interesting. But then when you talk to founders, you realize that there are a lot of founders who ये जो idea stage पे है उनको पैसे चाहिए. It's just that YC के focus में India इतना है नहीं. And YC would ask, Indian founders to flip to the US and do a lot of things which were useful for them because you get access to US as an investor market. But Indian founders को इतना अच्छा नहीं लग रहा था वो. And today, this is few years back. Today, a lot of companies are flipping back to India because it's become such an interesting market to raise money in. तो ये एक आइडिया है, मतलब ट्रिगर्ड एंड आई स्टार्ट टू वंडर दैट मे बी एक गैप यहाँ आ रही है जो वाईसी ने छोड़ा. एंड देन आई स्टार्टेड टू लुक डीपर एंड डीपर. तो इंडिया में हर साल अबाउट 1,000 प्री सीड डील्स होती हैं विच आर लेस देन 2.5 crores इन साइज. जस्ट 10% ऑफ दोज डील्स आर डन बाय द टॉप 10 प्री सीड फंड्स. मतलब जो 90% है वो ये टॉप 10 इंस्टीट्यूशन नहीं कर रहे हैं. इसका मतलब ये है कि these institutions are not deploying in so many companies and probably there aren't enough institutions in this stage जहाँ पे एक founder idea लेके आते हैं और they don't get funded. And then when I looked at that data, there were situations where one person had raised 1 crore from 31 different people. It was insane. Like अगर आप
5 lakh,
31,
6 lakh
हाँ,
type.
5 लाख 6 लाख चेक्स राइट. और अगर आप 30 लोग से पैसे ले रहे हो तो आप कितने सारे लोगों के पास गए होंगे, क्योंकि नॉट एवरीबडी गिव्स यू मनी राइट. एंड क्लियरली फॉर द फाउंडर इट्स पेनफुल. लाइक इफ यू हैव टू गो टू 30 people टू रेज 1 crore, देयर इज अ प्रॉब्लम. तो मेरा सब बहुत बड़ा इंसाइट आया इधर, विच इज़ इंडिया इज दिस यूनिक मार्केट विच इज़ बोथ अंडर कैपिटलाइज एंड ओवर कैपिटलाइज्ड. ओवर कैपिटलाइज क्यों? क्योंकि सम कंपनीज गेट अ लॉट ऑफ मनी, क्योंकि इंडियन मार्केट इज कैप्ड एट सम लेवल, बट सम कंपनीज बिकम रियली raise too much money and then they're not able to justify the valuation. But इनके इन्वेस्टमेंट के एक्सपेंस पे a lot of companies don't get any money.
True.
So I was like, what is the stage where you can give most people the chance to become an entrepreneur and deliver an outcome? And it started to become apparent कि pre-seed stage में बहुत opportunity है for an institution. क्योंकि seed में there are more organized funds, series A, series B में as you start going up the ladder, it's more organized. Like if seed is 90% disorganized, series B is 90% organized. It's like that. It just flips in 3 stages. So there is a disorganized stage. And I think ये जो 1,000 pre-seed deals होती हैं, there are probably 5,000 founding teams that are interested
Yeah.
and are probably even good. There's so many people working at big tech companies and large Indian tech companies. So my estimate is that at least 5,000 teams each year that could get funding. तो 1,000 ही फंड हो रहे हैं, 5,000 हो सकते हैं. So it's a large market, it's very disorganized. And if you look at the return profile of the unicorns of India, 45% of them had raised their first round at less than 35 crores valuation. Their first check, which means that pre-seed has the maximum returns as well, obviously क्योंकि आपका
Yeah.
entry price is the lowest. In fact, in some cases like Ola for example is a 1500x for its first investor. They raised at a 1.5 1.6 crore.
Yeah, I think Anupam
Yeah,
Mittal
yeah,
says he
yeah, yeah,
invested
yeah,
25,
yeah.
30 lakhs for
Correct,
almost
correct. This was
15%
insane.
equity.
Correct, correct. This was insane. And these are all angels. It could have been an institution as well. And so there are lots of companies like that which raised at these really early valuations, and they've driven the returns. So all of this combined is disorganized market, large market, potential for returns, and very difficult to access. That's the biggest problem.
People
Uh,
don't know who
we,
to.
People don't know
Right.
who to invest in, and then how will you reach out to so many founders? And then I was getting so many DMs, like you said, and I have built this 500,000 follower base on LinkedIn and Twitter, which is basically where most of founders are. And then I looked at my follower profile, and LinkedIn has started to allow it for top voices and top creators. So 12% were founders. Like founder was 12% of the demographic, which is huge. Like
Yeah.
40,000 log hain wo. It's not a small number. And then you have IITs, IIMs, and other backgrounds. So it became clear that I have access to this pool. I can get access to it with a post, because I've been doing effort for 10 years to build this audience. And there's a real opportunity. So founder and market fit ho gaya, and then this kind of that's where I arrived. Anyway, I have always been doing this stage of investing. I've been doing pre-seed or seed only. I like that 0 to 1 stage. So my DNA is also like that. It's just, so all these things came together, and then I realized that, hey, there's something I can do. Obviously, the very hard part is raising money as a fund manager. And I think I've been lucky in that aspect, that we've been able to raise a significant amount.
100 CR, that number is right.
Yes, correct. So we are starting with a 100 crore fund. Um, and funds are raised over many years, but we've seen an insane amount of interest in just like a few weeks of the fund. So yeah, I think we are in good shape.
Yeah, and as you said, early stage funding is one of the most disorganized in
Correct.
India, right? We see that in our videos. People keep commenting that I have this idea. Who do I reach out? Should I reach out to angel investors? Should I DM these big VC firms? And I think there's not enough
Correct.
awareness. There's so much misinformation on internet, and I'm
Right.
glad you're solving that. Before we jump on to more macro stuff on what's actually happening in Indian startup ecosystem, just one last question about your fund. If someone wants to reach out to you, if they want to raise funding, what should they keep in mind just to ensure they don't waste your time and you don't waste their time?
So I will ensure that I will not waste their time. I They will, by virtue of that, both people will be solved for. I think founders' time is very important. We treat every founder with respect and with a gratitude for having tried to start something. Like the idea may or may not be good, but उन्होंने मेहनत की है कुछ, courage. For me, like the motto for us is backing the courageous to become entrepreneurs. क्योंकि courage लगता है, जिगरा लगता है to become an entrepreneur, and वो बहुत कम लोगों में होता है. Like I have become an entrepreneur very recently. I know how hard and scary it is. And I think there is a lot of gratitude and respect for that first. Um, Anybody who goes to the AJVC website can fill a very simple 3-minute form, and they'll get a yes or no answer in 24 to 48 hours. That ensures that people who know they are in the next round, they will know in like a day or two, and people who are not, they will know in a day or two. The reason why we are telling both, because VC ecosystem, and Pankaj, you must have seen this as well. VCs बताते ही नहीं उनको इन्वेस्ट करना है या नहीं करना है जल्दी. um,
Exactly. That's why I
and
said, so that you also don't waste their
yeah,
time, because
yeah.
you, as in a sense, investors.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a reason why VCs don't do it. They want to keep the option open कि बाद में शायद ये interesting हो जाए. But I think if it's not a fit for us, we will let you know so that you can go to other people and try to raise money. And when we launched, in the first 3 days, we got 1,000 applications. It's insane. Like 1,000 teams in India applied, and we have given almost everybody an answer within 24 or maybe 36 hours on the first stage. Obviously, we have a process which takes a few weeks, but at least first stage पे पूरा clarity मिलता है आपको. And I was so surprised to see the warmth in responses, not just from people who got in. Of course, they'll be happy, but also those who didn't. Like they were like, "You responded. I didn't expect a response." And how fast, right? So we have a testimonial section also in our website, which we put from emails we have received. And I'm very glad. And I think that we are thinking the right way. um, I think founders want an answer, and it doesn't have to be a yes. They also know that, I have to make very few investments, as a percentage. Of course, I will be doing a lot of investments. I'll probably be doing 10 or 12 in the first year itself, and then we'll increase. um, but even as a percentage, it's small. So they know that, likelihood is hard, so they would appreciate an answer rather than, you just
Yeah.
going cold. So that's
Yeah.
one promise. We want to be fast, we want to be approachable, and we'll be as transparent as possible. Not everybody obviously can get feedback, all thousand, but once you go to the second stage, we're actually giving personalized feedback as well, which you won't find probably in most other funds.
Yeah. No, but like, what are some mistakes that you have seen? Like you said, you received 1,000 plus applications in 2 weeks.
Right,
Like, what are some general mistakes that people are doing? Is it something on the idea stage? Is it
right,
something on the team
right,
side? Like, what
right.
are some common mistakes?
I think, one general observation I have, I wouldn't say it's a mistake. Mistake होता है जब आपको पता है और आप still गलती करते हो, आपको पता ही नहीं है. Lack of awareness, I think, is the big challenge. A lot of founders are not thinking ambitiously when they are going to raise money that is VC. Now,
Hmm.
अगर आपको वेंचर मनी रेज नहीं करना है, then you don't need to think ambitiously necessarily. If you're able to make a 15 crore, 20 crore revenue business, you'll be sorted for life. I mean, it's very hard, by the way, to do that. But if you have to raise VC money, देन यू हैव टू थिंक कि मेरा 1,000 करोड़ का रेवेन्यू कैसे बन सकता है इस मार्केट में. दैट इज लाइक a question you have to ask. There's a lack of awareness problem. It's not that they know, they
Yeah.
just don't know how the VC is thinking. So how I think is, can this company generate 1,000 crores of revenue, and be worth maybe 5,000 crores? That's like the broad math. So, many of them come with ideas and problems that are very small.
Hmm.
Like the total revenue available is probably like 500 crores. So if the total revenue is 500 crores, you obviously will not get full market share. You're unlikely to, build a large company. So I think that's one really big gap, and that's what I would say is a challenge for a lot of entrepreneurs. um, I think the second thing is, the opposite end of the spectrum, where they try to do too much. So one is where they go after a really small problem, and the other is where they want to do everything. You and it's a very delicate balance where you have to like pick a large enough problem, but it's also not so big that the company gets stretched in multiple directions. It's a sign of lack of focus. Like they want to sell to an enterprise also, they want to sell to SMB also, they want to sell to a retail customer also. These are all very different personas. तो ये बहुत मैंने देखा है बाइनरी काइंड ऑफ बिहेवियर वेयर they think that they will sell to the US, they will sell to India, they'll sell to, I'm like, boss, India में ही तुम कर लोगे बहुत बड़ी बात है. So I see this like big, binary problem in some sense, that lack of ambition and then being over ambitious. I mean, it's unreasonable. um, so this is on the market. I think many founders also are not very clear on what they are solving. Like their problem statement is not clear. If you read it, you can't really tell wo kar kya rahe hain. Like there's a lot of words, but it doesn't tell you what they are doing. And lack of clarity on problem, lack of clarity on solution, these are the things. But I think generally, like the first two are major problems in the Indian ecosystem.
Got it. Yeah, and I think if you guys have any more questions about AJVC fund, feel free to ask in the comments, and I'll make sure I'll send them to Aviral. But yeah, now just zooming out a bit, right? Because what we do at Backstage with Millennials is telling the story of Indian startup ecosystem as a whole, right? So where are we right now? Like we are seeing sort of Indian startup ecosystem as at the bottom of a wave, right? So 2021 was this boom. You had insane amount of money raised,
Right.
Valuations were 10x, 20x, and right now we are seeing the realities of that. And now because there's a lack of funding, people are focusing on profitability, right?
Right.
So that's one side. Then there people are saying we are at the beginning of another bull run that's going to
Hmm.
last for remaining 2024 and most of 2025. What do you see as the macro trend? Like, will we see same kind of boom like 2021? Will we see more? Like, what's your prediction?
So I think 21 and 22 maybe beginning was a lot because of um, US printing money to stimulate the world after the pandemic or during the pandemic. Um, I think the world was kind of getting into a recessionary phase just pre pandemic. Then it crashed and then it got overstimulated. तो बहुत सारा पैसा प्रिंट हो गया. I like to say this that US outsources services to India, manufacturing to China, and inflation to the world. And this is what they do through money printing because the dollar is the strongest. And when you print a lot of money, it starts to chase the हाईएस्ट रिटर्न एसेट क्लासेस जनरली क्योंकि क्या होता है कि आप मनी प्रिंट कर रहे हो सो योर इंटरेस्ट रेट्स फॉल एंड देन द सेफर इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स लाइक बॉन्ड्स एंड debt etc they become less attractive because you would have seen it, interest rates fell. That means that if you put money in a FD or a debt kind of instrument you'll get lower interest rates. They have started to rise now, but they were low. So
Yeah.
now when you have low interest rates, what everyone's incentive is to put money into equities, put money into private equity, put money into startups. So a lot of money came into startups. That's why there was a lot of money chasing these very few companies, and that's why their valuations increased. Now the money has gone
Hmm.
and the valuation was based on one interest rate. So I mean I won't go into the details, but एक discounted cash flow होता है जो valuation determine करता है. And for startups the farther out the cash flow is, the more important it is. तो आपका discounted rate is compounded over time, and if the discount rate increases even a little, the startup valuation is very sensitive because the revenue and cash flow is going to come in the future. It's not going to come immediately. So valuations are of startups are very sensitive to interest rates. That's basically what it is. So interest rate बढ़ गया, valuations कम हो गए, and India was very much in sync with the global market. It wasn't like an India specific problem. In fact, if you see equity markets in India and the startup ecosystem, they're almost going in different directions.
Hmm.
Where the equity market is having the best time ever,
Yeah.
and the startup ecosystem is struggling. My hypothesis for that is the equity markets have domestic capital access, which is mutual funds and SIPs, which are via mutual funds as well. But the startup ecosystem does not have that much access to domestic capital. It's mostly foreign money.
Yes.
It started to change. Like, for example, our fund is mostly domestic. And I think a lot of new funds are actually raising money from India, investing in India, and keeping it in India, which is a good thing. Um, so when foreign money went out, which is what most venture was in India, the startups started to, you know, lose valuation. And while domestic capital was putting money in equity markets. So we are today in 24 where I think there's a reset happening of some sort. A lot of companies at the later stages are getting discounted in their valuations. Some are struggling to raise, some may die. I think it's all part and parcel of capitalism. There's going to be death, creation, hype, etc. It's
Yeah.
a continuous cycle. Um, I don't think there's going to be a bull run in the next 2 years. There's no chance. It's the in fact the all the stuff that has been done in the last 2-3 years of excessive investments and all are going to come back now.
Hmm.
Because क्या होता है कि आपने 21 या 22 में इन्वेस्ट किया है, startups have runway for 24 to 36 months. 24 to 36 months is now. So a lot of these companies are now going to try and raise money, and then they're not going to be able to raise money. Then they're either going to die or they're going to have markdowns. And a lot of investors in India are just waiting for their portfolio to give the correct picture of कितने पानी में है.
Reset.
um, Yeah, so the reset is going to take some time. I think it will be there till the end of 24 and maybe early 25. You will see that the activity is very muted. So I'm an investor, right? I know how many deals are happening. There's not too much going on.
Hmm.
um that said, entrepreneurs start regardless of cycles. They see an idea, they think it's interesting, and they need to begin. So I'm at least starting to see a lot of quality entrepreneurs coming into the market, and not raising at crazy valuations. So in fact, our offer of it's a standard offer, which is 1.5 crores for 9%, um, is very appealing to a lot of especially first time founders, who actually probably don't have access to any capital at this point. um, and I think it's a great time to start a company. It's also a great time to invest because सब rationalize हो रहा है अभी. Everyone's asking questions कि this valuation is correct or not. I don't think there's going to be a bull run in the next few years, but I think it's the beginning of a long cycle, which
Hmm.
has happened in history. I cannot say कि it's starting today or starting next year, but broadly we are in the beginning of a cycle for the startup ecosystem, which takes like 10 years of up and down. And the interesting thing is, ये जो crash हुआ था last had happened about 10 years back in 2015, when there was a huge hype. And in fact, quick delivery was one of the most funded sectors then also. So I tend to say that the signal of a market top is when quick delivery gets funded the most. So it's 21, 22, and 2015 also. There are a lot of companies that many of your viewers may not have heard of: a runner, Tiny Owl, Pepper Tap. They all raised tens of millions of dollars then, which was
Yeah.
very difficult, and they're all dead. I mean, many of them got acquired between each other, and then they got sold to Swiggy. So Swiggy is the only company that survives from that time, which was doing like hyperlocal delivery. It was called hyperlocal then. Today it's called quick commerce. Kind of the same only. The time has reduced. So I think the next 10 years are going to be very interesting. 2015, mein India was probably like 1.5 trillion ish GDP. Today we are at 4 trillion. So you have like almost 2.5 times the market available now versus then. So for a startup to become worth 1 billion, there is more room. And
Yeah.
then in the next 10 years, there'll be even more room. So the way I look at it is that, what percentage of the GDP is $1 billion, right? And if the percentage obviously will keep on becoming smaller and smaller, so it becomes easier and easier for a startup to reach that. Because then tech and all, there are enough markets, there's enough money. So I think we will see more companies scale up faster as well,
Yeah.
in the next, you know 10 years. That's also going to happen.
Got it. I think one point that stayed with me with what you just explained is most of the money that comes in Indian startup ecosystem is foreign money, right?
Correct.
And I was seeing some data, I wrote about it a few days back, that around 75% of money in Indian VC and PE last year was foreign money. And I
Correct.
compared it with China. So
Hmm.
China may, I'm sure you would know this,
Hmm.
government is the biggest investor. So
Correct.
government, it's a central, state, and even smaller than that, three
Right.
layers of government.
Right.
They contribute around 40% of money. Like they are the
Hmm.
LPs, right?
Right.
So what byproduct I thought of what happens because of that is if government is taking such a active role,
Right.
you can put in money where the priorities are, like the national, what are the,
Correct.
these are the sectors where you want to dominate at, right?
Correct.
AI, it's EV, right? But in India, like just to give another number, in India, that government role is around 5%. Government
Correct.
last year invested was around 5%.
Correct.
So how do you see how do we change it? Like how can we ensure more government and local money comes into startup ecosystem?
I think in China, it's probably swung to the other end where the private money has gone out. The good combination is where you have private and government together, because then it just becomes like the government sets the agenda for the market. It's
Yeah.
a little hard. So a lot of VC firms have actually left or reduced their deployment in China because it's become very hard to tell keep government priority kya hogi. But in India, I'm already starting to see this change. So there are already some government authorities that invest in funds. So that is one way of enabling the ecosystem. There are funds like SIDBI and SRI that are really enabling fund managers. But the new interesting trend is family offices and domestic money. So there are a lot of wealthy families in India that have started to find this asset class attractive. So they were initially focused on very traditional form of investing, which was like real estate, gold. Then they slightly started to move into equities. Now they have started looking at alternatives as a very
Yeah.
important asset class. That is going to be a big driver. I think the number of family offices with 100 crore plus has ballooned over the last 5 to 6 years, and they become very serious about investing in the startup ecosystem, either through funds or even directly. So I think this money is going to shift. I'm starting to see it around me as well. A lot of Indian funds, even at scale, are raising a significant amount of money from India itself.
Right.
So that is starting to happen in a big, big way now.
I think
So
as Yeah, I think as people see more like successful IPOs, as they see
correct,
people actually making money,
correct,
that's going to happen more.
correct. That's right.
Yeah. Now I think I just have last two questions. These are about certain sectors because I think a lot of our viewers, they want to
Mm-hmm.
build something in future, either 6 months time or 1 year time. And two sectors that we get a lot of questions about are
Right.
AI and EdTech. So first, I want you to answer about
Mm.
AI
Mm.
because there's so much chatter, right? Since the advent of ChatGPT 2 years back, people are looking for all sorts of applications. They're seeing so much money coming in, so they're like, "What can we
Mm.
build?" Right? So,
Okay.
what I want you to answer: what are some trends
Mm.
that you're seeing in
Mm.
AI? What kind of ideas are getting funded? And what should people keep in mind
Mm.
if they want to build something into it? And later, I want
Right.
you to answer the same about EdTech.
Sure. So I remember when Sam of OpenAI said that India should not build an OpenAI equivalent some time back. We got all worked up and गुस्सा हो गए कि ये Sam ऐसे कैसे बोल सकता है हमारे बारे में. But I think we need to understand the reality of India and where we are. So we are an emerging market on a PPP basis. We are probably like $6,000-7,000. The US is 10 times that. हमारी needs अलग हैं. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is why I made this triangle. We are probably on level 2 or level 3 of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is we've just gone beyond like wanting a Zomato and want to do a little more than that, like insurance, equity, all those things. वो safety security वाला layer आ गया है.
Yeah.
AI foundational models, which is Chat GPT or OpenAI's GPT-4, the foundational models, are probably what a country which is at the highest end self-actualization पहुंच चुकी है. They have a lot of money and they can sit around and not generate revenue for 10 years. Is exactly what OpenAI did. They can afford to do it. I don't think we can afford to do it. We don't have that ecosystem yet. But AI will enable a lot of use cases which are relevant for Indian needs. So I think trying to build a foundational model in India is going to be hard and you'll need to raise a lot of money. There are obviously some companies in India which have done that. But the large number of founders should probably focus on finding a useful use case for India and applying AI into it. So, for example, making finance easier, like life of a chartered accountant easier, or a legal professional easier, or a teacher easier, etc., etc., or optimizing the workflow of an enterprise. यहाँ पे बहुत scope है. And this doesn't require you to build a foundational model, but it requires you to understand AI. In some way, it is taking technology capability and selling it as a service to somebody who doesn't have tech capability, which is what software was in the first place. So AI is like this new form of software. So I think look at problem areas in India where AI is useful, especially जहाँ पे summarization है, बहुत structured text है, उसको synthesize करना है, बहुत rule based kind of sector है. There are lots of sectors like that. वहाँ पे AI का यूटिलिटी बहुत है. So I see Indian founders emerging in this category. And if you are thinking of building something in AI, that's probably an interesting angle to look at. um, Edtech is a hard one.
Edtech में
Uh,
just to like give just to explain a little bit context कि 2021 में जो लोगों ने बनाया,
hmm,
चैट जीपीटी killed like most of those
hmm,
use cases, right?
right.
So अभी going ahead, what kind of apps, like what is it something that AI won't be able to solve in next 3 4 years that people can build successful
Yeah.
businesses in?
Um, I think EdTech has fundamentally a couple of challenges. One is ki, education at least for K-12 is limited, or laws of physics uske hain jo annual cycle hota hai. So you can't speed up more than 1 year. So let's say you want to acquire 7 standard students, the acquisition is done in May or June. उसके बाद आप नहीं कर सकते हो, मतलब it's you understand, right? There's a 1 year gap.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's a structural speed problem which VCs love. Like VCs want fast growth. So one thing I always think of is the K-12 edtech market VC fundable? I'm still deliberating on it. Um, Clearly, education is an opportunity. बहुत सारे लोगों को education चाहिए, और there's a lot of money in education. But a lot of it is just with the core focus curriculum, schools kind of revenue models. I fundamentally think that education may the real alpha is motivating someone to get a result. It has almost never been about content. It has always been about delivery and nudges. So if somebody can really build a exceptional delivery mechanism with the nudges, इसको teaching बोलते हैं, मतलब you're simulating a teacher. What a teacher does is not generate the content but deliver it and motivate the students to do better and have outcomes. I think उसमें AI का actually utility है. So if
Hmm.
someone can bring these two together and build something, it will be very fascinating. For example, Duolingo is a great app which does both of these. It's not that nobody knows how Chinese or English translates into each other. The way they've structured it and the way they've gamified it, a lot of people learn.
Yeah.
So I'm not prescribing that make a Duolingo. I'm just saying that think about nudges, delivery, and outcomes. I think ये एजुकेशन में रियल गैप है, एंड आई थिंक इट विल ऑलवेज बी. इंडिया में तो बहुत सारे लोगों को एक्सेस भी नहीं है एजुकेशन का.
Hmm. थोड़ा you're saying gamify it a little bit, make it competitive.
No,
Uh,
that's one way of doing it. You don't need to necessarily gamify it. You
yeah,
can you you can even have like a person of one tutor who knows what your weaknesses are, knows what your strengths are, and knows exactly when to do the intervention.
yeah.
कि आज आके इनको ये बोलो, इस बच्चे को ये गैप है, आज छोड़ दो कल बोलो, द थिंग्स दैट अ टीचर डज. So I think that those are opportunities for sure.
Is there any last message you have for BWM audience?
If you are wanting to start a company and just need that nudge, reach out to us, and don't hesitate in starting a company, because it's probably the best way for us to get to the 8 trillion or 10 trillion mark. I think we need a lot more entrepreneurs.
Great. I think that was very
Hmm.
insightful. I didn't realize we have spoken for almost 45 minutes. But thanks, Aviral, for your time and all the best for your fund. Let us know how we can help in any ways. And yeah, I can't wait to talk to you again.
Thanks,
Great.
Pankaj.
Thank you, Aviral. Bye bye.
Bye.